The first question I'm going to answer is I'm good at creating content. So the person that asks is like they create content, they've got that routine and that habit, which number one, that's a whole thing to build up. Something I'm working on doing and will be doing in 2024. But the big question is like we're putting all this effort into creating content. So how do you create content that is actually going to convert your best clients into booking a call with you, investing in your program, whatever that looks like for you. So the key thing is that every piece of content should have one next clear step or call to action. You may have heard this referred to as a CTA. That should be included as you're planning your content. If you're creating new content, like I will be, then one system that I use is I am creating a content database, and I'll share more about that in future videos. But even if it's where you keep your drafts or whatever, have next step as one of the things that maybe is a bullet point at the top. Because if you're creating content, your content should have a goal, and the goal is usually to get them to that next step. And the goal could even, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there's content can have more than one goal, but you're creating content for the purpose of getting somebody to interact with you, whether that's downloading a lead magnet, joining the community, booking a call with you, buying a thing, investing in your program. That's the whole purpose of the content we create in our businesses. So if you're new, make sure that you've got this as kind of like a checklist item of, hey, I have one clear step. And I'll kind of get into this in the lessons that I did, as to why one is so important. But if you already have a library of content, say you've got social content, you've been doing a podcast, blog, whatever that looks like for you, focus on the 10% of the content that has the most views. If you've been at this for multiple years, you can go minimum a year back, just because that'll give you some information on maybe the seasonality, if you've got more years than that. If you have the data available, go back as far as you can so you can see what has been the most popular, and then focus just on the top 10% of all of your content to make sure that it's got a relevant CTA and all of that. So understanding how our content performs touches on a subject I know a lot of people will run from screaming, and that is measurement and analytics, because you do have to use data to know how your content is doing, because that data is your audience's side of the conversation or your best client. And I'll get to kind of the difference between audience versus best client in just a little bit. But places that you can look for data are going to be if you've got Google Analytics on your website. I don't know much about podcasting backend services, but I know some of them will probably have some analytics. Email service providers, so like open rates, click through, like those are standard out of the box data points that you get with those services. Social media, platform analytics, and depending on the platform, and I think if you're paid on some platforms, you may have access to more data or less data depending. The key is to have some data to work from. Even if it's just in one little area, just get some data. That's all we care about. You have to start somewhere. And so the whole purpose of measurement when you're thinking about website or content performance is to measure to see how many people that saw your content or are aware of it, saw, same thing, then took that next step that you had teed up. And so with this information, we can look for patterns and trends so you can focus on repurposing and resharing what is working well. And I have, actually, I'll go ahead and pull that up and then we'll contact through as soon as I find where my mouse went. So there are different things when you're analyzing content. And I'm going to use say this example here. We've got content A, B, and C, and there is all three of these. The next step that we have outlined is they download my lead magnet. And then D, which lets them skip directly to book that call. So the core thing is that one step only. There's a reason why I'm not saying, hey, download my lead magnet or book a call, because it's like, well, which do they want me to do? It's easier not to do anything. Because you'll hear me say this again, a confused mind doesn't buy. And we think that we're doing our best clients a favor by, giving them a choose your own adventure path. There's ways to do that, but when it comes to having the clear path, you always want to make the clear ideal path forward the clearest. Because based on, the people that saw the content, the people that took the next step, you divide the people that took the next step by how many people saw it, and then that's what your content conversion rate is. When you're analyzing, it's saying, okay, out of content A, B, and C, which one of these content pieces is doing the best at getting the conversion? So which one of these has the highest conversion rate? And then from there, you look at, okay, well, are there more topics, or are there specific topics or things that are more effective in getting people to take to the next step? Are you using the right next step for the content that you've created? There's a lot of these different questions that you could ask and kind of go through. But the biggest thing is you want to focus on creating content that's going to address the pain points and desires of your best clients. Because your goal is with your content is to position your coaching package or whatever it is that you're offering as the next step. So you kind of talk through, I'm kind of doing this in today's presentation as well. You'll see that. I feel free to go back and rewatch after this and look through with more of an analyst hat on of like, okay, she talked about this, that when, maybe why did she do that? And at the end, you'll see as I kind of lead into what I want your next step to be. So I kind of chose to use this as an example. You also don't want to assume that they know what you're offering just because they're on your profile or your website. A lot of times, especially if it's a blog post or podcast, they might be in a platform and they haven't visited your website yet. So they don't know that you have this fantastic, transformative coaching program that is the answer to what they're looking for. And so you have to constantly talk about it. You're not bugging people. You're not, annoying them, especially in the realm of social media. Like 1 to 5% of your followers, I think, is the industry standard. I remember reading about that. They're seeing your content. So it's a different 1 to 5% usually, depending on what you're talking about, what the algorithm has seen them engage with, and all of that. So that's why you have to keep repeating it. Don't assume that just because they saw your blog post, they went to your services page or saw any of that information. Call it out in the content you're creating. Treat it kind of like its own little capsulated ecosystem, that like this could be the one thing that they see and nothing else. And you want to make it easy for them to become a lead or to book a call with you directly just from that content. They don't have to go through a fancy funnel or any of this other stuff. There's multiple paths to the same, but they're all leading to that same destination. And that's kind of what I've laid out here, where if you're just starting out, and this is something I'm kind of go back to phase 1 in my my end of things for is really, okay, I might actually be stage 2, but we'll get to that second. But really, it's the end result is I want them to book a call with me so I can have a conversation to get to know, their needs, their pain points, and find out. And yes, this is potentially a sales call, but it's really that call to determine, are they a fit? Are they in a position where they're ready to make the decision, to take the action? Or is this something that, you have a conversation and you realize, oh, they're really invested in strategy Y, and I'm just not about to touch that with a 10-foot pole. You don't make the offer at the end of the call. It's really just that's the whole point of booking the call is that's the next thing. Um, and plus, it's also good to have this in as a practice because this is also those sales calls also serve as market research because you're going to get um, words from your clients' mouths that you can use in your marketing copy and all of that to really focus in and show, hey, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're not telling me. And I know what you think the problem might be, but here's why you've been blocked. And you can really leverage that. And that's why, if you're just starting out, the goal is to really get them on that call because it's beneficial for you both. They can get some clarity with what their next step should be. Again, everything is leading to that next step, and they're coming to you to prescribe that next step. So you offer them one thing. Um, that'll be a big thing today. And so, really, and getting back to the best client versus audience dynamic here, a lot of people are like, well, I want to grow my audience. I want to, build an audience. That's cool. Is your purpose to entertain or is your purpose to get clients? So there may be best clients within your audience. There are also going to be a lot of best client adjacent um, people in your audience. So while somebody might be in your audience, but they are definitely not your best client, or they could be past clients that have kind of graduated out of the transformation of your current offer, which is a goal. Because, as coaches, we don't want somebody to be like beholden to us forever. We want them to get the results so they can go on and continue to learn and grow and get whatever the impact or result is that you're promoting, helping them get. Because then they'll be ready to refer people that they know of that are in that same situation to you. So it's this big kind of ecosystem that is your audience, but your best client is the person that willingly and happily pays the or pays your rate or invests in your programs. In other words, you've had a monetary exchange there that you're happy with and that they're happy with because they got the result. Like think about the people that you've enjoyed working with. Look for some of those commonalities. What were some of the words and things that they used? And then kind of use that to create your best client profile. And it really does help if you have a specific name to assign to it. Like I've got mine, and you can bet every time in my brain, I'm like, okay, what would my best client think about this? And I put her name in there. And so when you're creating content, it's like you're creating one-on-one because when we consume content, it is that one-on-one interaction. That's why if you're doing reels or things, you're like, hey, everyone. I'm like, no, they're not talking to me. But if it's, hi, and I'm speaking like I'm having a conversation one-on-one to somebody, whether or not, in the back of our minds, we realize, okay, this is a group call or something like that. I'm still speaking to an individual. Like I am speaking to the individual that asked this question, but multiple people get to benefit because a lot of other people I know have this same question. So that is kind of what you want to do to create content that converts. So kind of bonus to this, Ways to think of content, like these could be social media posts. I don't deal right now on a bunch of ads, but ad is still technically content because you got the image, you've got the ad copy that gets them, and it's a much more direct path versus like a blog article that somebody finds on Pinterest or through SEO. Um, your lead magnet I mentioned is a content piece. Your sales pages are content pieces. Even um, emails, but more specifically like the email sequence, because it is kind of that journey of steps. Those are all content assets that you have in your business. And if you're in your first year, you're building those content assets, which is one of the reasons why it feels so hard. So that's actually my very first one, is like why the first full year of business can be so hard. And a large part of it is you're creating your content assets from scratch. So if you can do that in a strategic way, you're only going to set yourself up for a lot more success down the road. So to that end, like, here are the different phases of how I kind of think through both content and measuring the effectiveness of that content. Because the goal is also you grow into complexity. You start with your first iteration, and you grow into complexity in your business. Because we try to build complicated things out of the gate, stuff will, quite frankly, crash and burn. You're going to burn out. Your business will crash and burn. It's just not great. So that's why if you're new, focus on creating content. And then if you're like, well, I don't have a lead magnet yet, hey, don't let that stop you. Just get into book the next call, because I guarantee you're going to get an idea for what your best client would see as a valuable lead magnet. So, yes, a lead magnet is very important because that helps you build your list, but taking the time to create a lead magnet based on client and even non-client questions and feedback, you're going to create a much higher quality. And I think definitely going into 2024, especially in the age where we've got AI, people just letting AI kind of write a bunch of content for them will make the quality is going to start to rise to the top. Because in this last year, we've seen the explosion of AI content. Most people can be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was written by AI or something like that, just because it doesn't have the deep insights and the quality insights that I know you bring to the table as a coach. So basic, everything, just book a call. And you can do this purely through social if you want. I don't recommend always staying there, but if you're starting out, your main goal is cash flow. So social plus booking a call, you're golden. The second phase is kind of building your list. So you've done a lot of those calls. Whether or not you have sold your program is neither here nor there. But through that, you're getting a better shape of what your best client is, or people that you would really like to work with more. And so you'll know what one mini problem or what one tiny problem that you can solve for them would be that they would consider valuable, and you turn that into a lead magnet. And this is something I haven't done in my own, and I'm going to be doing it as soon as I get actually, no, I don't need to wait to get my offer itself fully finalized, because I already know the big gist of the direction that's going. It's just kind of the more finer detail points that I'm working out. But I know enough about where that's going that I can make, the content of the lead magnet that gets them past that one, challenge or their biggest hurdle. And I'm talking like tangible result, not like, oh, we've gone from zero to full website or something like that. Like, not that it's okay, we got our website planning done. So you're set up for success when you're ready to go, shop around to people to build said website. You're ready to engage that. So that's thinking through like the mini transformation is like what's the first starting point, because once you solve that starting point, you know that they're going to have more questions, and you can have the very clear call to action of, hey, book a call with me. And then that's where you can kind of introduce them to the whole methodology, or learn about where they might fit within what you have to offer as a coach. Um, but you'll notice, book a call, book a call, book a call. There's all these, like, all roads lead to that call. That's actually what one of my mentors is always saying. And guess what? She was right. Because I did resist that for a really long time. But you have to have conversations in order to make conversions and sales. Because the more conversations you have, the better your content will be, and it's just going to be this kind of flywheel of success, because you're just going to get more momentum with it. So, and then phase 3 is if you've got a community. For example, I've got the Facebook community that you're probably seeing this in, if you're not watching it live on YouTube. And so you can see where maybe my content A, the better option is to push toward a lead magnet. Or if I had 2 lead magnets here, content A could have a lead magnet that is around tech. And so, or content A is about technology or websites or something like that. So then I might have a lead magnet that's website planning guide. So it's very topically related, versus, content B could be about business planning, which business planning, website planning, that could be fine, but doing a, strategic business foundational planning or some other type of lead magnet could make sense for that. So you can align by topic. Don't start there. You don't have to. I really wanted to. I really did. I'm pulling myself back. Because you can just, one lead magnet is really all you need. And then you can kind of evaluate either rotating it out or adding a new one, depending. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm trying to make this very simple. But if you have a community, you can have a post that goes, hey, join our community to keep this discussion going. Versus, you can also have that be your one call to action at the end of a lead magnet. Versus you can have just book straight to a call. So in a and this is growing into complexity. So in a semi-complex environment like this, where you have a digital product, then then depending on the lead magnet, again, this doesn't have to be lead magnet A, you're not offering 2 options, it's what makes the most sense, because you really think about the customer journey here. Funnels equal customer journeys. That's all they are. People hear funnels, they freak out. Don't worry about it. It is basically this simple as I'm laying it out here. But you always want to have, if you've got different options as you will grow into, you will want to have a mix of calls to action in your content, so people can discover those at the surface level and jump into the one that they want or need. But there's also a path to, hey, I joined the community. I don't have this set up, but I could have a regular post or something like that where, hey, your next step is book a call or something like that, or send me a DM. Um, which that's actually something I don't have here, because send me a DM is a totally valid next step. So if you've got social media, especially, you could even do, going back here, social media posts, send me a DM, and then if through that conversation you have, you're like, yeah, I want to get on a phone with this person, then you send them the link to book a call. So again, we're growing into complexity here. And so there's different ways and different journeys that this can take. Now, when you're measuring your conversion rate, you want to focus on behaviors and measurement as you're looking at, okay, I've created content, how is it converting? And so, did they, after viewing the content, did they wind up on a thank you page? Did they complete booking an appointment, if that's what it was? Did they comment the word that you needed to start that DM conversation? Awareness, and different tools are going to call it different things, but at its core is content views. So in terms of, like, I know Instagram, there's like the whole reach and impressions. This one would be, I like to focus on the people. So it's users. So in that context, I need to go back and brush up on my Instagram metrics, full disclosure. It's whichever one is the accounts that saw the post. So I believe that should be reach versus impressions is how many times was the post visible, regardless of how many users may have seen it multiple times. Please feel free to correct me in the comments or call me out if I have that wrong, but it is focusing on whatever metric discusses the person that's behind that account, that's there. And it can also be page views along the journey. Because if you've got a blog post that leads to an opt-in page that then leads to the thank you page, they haven't really completed that journey until they get to the thank you page. So if your goal is to have this content and have somebody download your CTA, it's really the thank you page you want to measure, as opposed to, hey, they saw my lead magnet. And there, we can discuss that if you've got further questions, but I will go ahead and move on. So just to kind of recap a shorter version of that answer, now that I've gone really deep. One, clear next step for every piece of content that you plan or that you create. Go back and look at content that you've created, and see what's in your top 10% of either people viewing it or getting people. Actually, I would start with the views, because then you can go back and add a call to action. And if it's something that you haven't shared in the last 6 months, feel free to reshare it on social with the new added CTA, because then that saves you having to create more content. There you go. And then really the biggest key is knowing what that next action is, because when you know what the next action is, you actually have something to measure against for that. And remember, you want to focus on creating content for your best client, because the audience will form up around that content anyway.